Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Dear Mom, I'm Gay podcast. I'm your host, David Dilsizian, and I am so excited for this week's guest. I can't even contain it. It's going to be amazing. We have the fabulous Miss Nellie Shuford on here. Say hello, Nellie.
Hello, Nellie.
Hello, Nellie. I love that. So for those of you that don't know who Nellie is, which I feel like many of the people listening to this have followed our journey, so we probably have some Nellie stands in the house listening to this. Well, not in the house because that'd be weird. Just Nellie fans listening to this. And she and I met, believe it or not, in 2019. That was a while ago. And I was getting ready to do our first workshop in Chicago, and I needed people. And the part that I originally had Nellie read for was a very small part, and they only had one song. And I remember I got this email from Nellie, and they were like, hey, were you in Colorado or Arizona?
Arizona.
Arizona. She was still in, you do use she pronouns, correct?
Yes.
Good. That's one of my questions for the game, and we haven't gotten there yet. Okay.
It's a bonus question.
It's a bonus question. So she emailed me and was like, hey, I'd really love to be a part of this, but I'm still in Arizona. Can I do a video? And I had kind of had a rule, this was pre-COVID, where I didn't want video auditions. I feel like it became a cool thing now, and I've gotten used to them. And I feel like you can get a feel for someone's talent through a video, but you can't get a feel for who they are as a person, if that makes sense.
Totally. Yes.
Yeah, and I cast just as much on who they are as a person as their talent because you have to work with them and you want it to be a good vibe among people and you want to make sure everybody's going to get along, and that's important. But Nellie's video was so good that I was like, yes. And then you probably don't remember this. I waited like a week to respond to you because I wrote Shoebox in that week because I was like, I can't invite this girl that's amazing to come sing and let her know she's singing one verse of one song. True story. So I was like, okay, I got to give her something else. And I had kind of been toying around with the Shoebox idea, which I will let you know at the time it was called Living Room Museum. So I'm glad we changed that.
Oh, though I love that title.
Okay, good. Because the woman that I wrote the song is based on she was my friend's mom. And she it wasn't a shoebox. Her whole living room was dedicated to my friend. Every dance trophy she ever won, every prize, every report card, every letter, like she had a whole basic shrine to my friend in their living room, which is amazing. I love that too.
Yeah.
And I was trying to make that a song, and it really wasn't working. Like I said, it was called Living Room Museum, and I'm glad you didn't balk at that title, because in my head now, I'm like, oh, it would have been cringe. But
it doesn't roll off the tongue in the same way that Shoebox does.
Right.
But I do love it.
So the concept was kind of there, and I was struggling with that song, which is rare for me. Generally, a song comes to me like in one setting, and I don't fight it. Like generally, it either comes to me or it doesn't. So I generally don't chew on something for like a long time. It's either there or it's not. But I kept coming back to this idea, and then I got the idea. I was like, well, what if she just has something? Because I was taking a class at the time on scene writing, and one thing that they said is to always use something visual when you can. That's the best way for the audience to relate to the story. And then I was like, well, what if I had something that she has that the audience can see that she keeps everything in? And that was where I came up with the idea for Shoebox. But it was all because your audition was amazing. So thank you for the song.
Well, thank you for watching the video. I did not know you were not accepting videos at all. What an honor.
I didn't. You were the only one. I also waited until after the in-person auditions because I felt like that was fair, that I should hear everyone before I make decisions. So that was also part of it. But I didn't have anybody that came in that time that really I felt was perfect for that character. And you were it. So I was like, nope, it's got to be this chick. And then I'm glad I picked you. So, because it was great. Now that I've rambled on and on about the wonderfulness of Nellie, I'm excited for everybody to get to know you a little bit and hear about you. So what are you up to now? What are you doing these days?
I just finished a production of The Sound of Music at Paramount Theater out in Aurora, Illinois.
Nice.
And we closed that maybe about a month ago at this point. So now I'm back to my day job, which is working at a store. And I also work for a company called Songs by Heart, where I go to various old folks communities, and we specifically go to memory care units and
Nice.
do kind of like a 45-minute, essentially a cabaret of golden age musicals, like American standards, all that. And it's like interactive, kind of a sing-along. And so it's me and a pianist, and I do that like twice a week at this point.
That's awesome.
Um, yeah, so that's my creative outlet while I'm selling shoes. And then, yeah, I'm doing the auditions. I'm
I,
doing all of the auditions whenever I can.
I love that.
Um,
How did Sound of Music go?
it was amazing. It was a whirlwind. It was kind of a 3-month chunk of my life where I didn't do any of the other work that I do. I left the shoe store. I didn't sing to the old people. And it was kind of an all-consuming moment, but it was really great to be back in a rehearsal room, back in a theater, working with, also getting to know people in this area. This was my first, like, large contract in Chicago. The
Nice.
only other thing I had done really was the workshop, all the Dear Mama, I'm Gay workshops. And that was meeting, maybe a total of 10 people, which was amazing to just talk to like-minded people again after the pandemic. But this
Yes.
was like, here are 30 new people, and it was like, whoa.
That's awesome. And who did you play
And,
again?
I was in the ensemble, one of the nuns, and I was the first understudy to Sister Berta and the
Nice.
second understudy to Mother Abbess.
Nice. Did you get to go on as any of the other roles?
I did get to go on as Sister Berta once.
Nice.
It was a Sunday matinee, and this is awful. Our Sister Berta, Liz Pasek, she is an amazing queer actress. She's great. And she thought the show started at 1:30, and the show started at 1. And
Oh,
so on the way to the show, she realized she was not going to make it in time. She called our stage manager, and it was half hour. I had just gotten there, was just kind of getting ready, sitting down. Stage manager came in and was like, Liz is running late. You are on.
oh
And I
my
was like,
gosh.
all right, yes.
It's your moment, kid.
Exactly, exactly. And I had actually kind of just gotten over losing my voice for
Oh
like a
gosh.
24-hour period. Yeah, it was the weirdest thing. It kind of always happens in December when it's dry. My voice
Yeah.
just goes out for a bit. And I had just gotten it back, and it was a whirlwind, but it was amazing. And it was like the most adrenaline ever to go on. I was just like full sweating, but
Yeah.
it was amazing.
I have an extreme appreciation for understudies. It's just, to me, that's the most nerve-wracking job. To just never know when you're going to go on and to have to know multiple parts.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I don't know. I would have immense anxiety if I if I had to understudy for
100%.
something. Maybe if you like had a long term where you'd gone on a few times or whatever. But yeah, I feel like I would be very anxious. But I'm sure you were fabulous and lived to the moment, and the audience I'm sure loved your performance.
Yeah, it was a wild ride. I mean, luckily, Sister Berta's biggest moment is in the first 30 minutes of the show. So then
Yeah.
she gets to take a nice sit for the next hour and a half.
Isn't that
So,
fun? Yeah, I did, as some of you know, I did Opera Grand Rapids for 10 years. And there are productions where I'm busy, and then there's productions like that where you're like, all right, for the next, well, opera can be even longer. For the next two
yeah,
hours, I'm playing euchre in the
yeah.
dressing room. Call
I
me when I need to
learned
come
how.
on and say my other line. I'll be back. Yeah.
That's hilarious. I learned how to play euchre on this contract. So,
See, that is what you do. I'm not a euchre person, but so it makes me laugh. In the Opera Grand Rapids, like the men's chorus room, I always call it like the invisible line. So on one side of our invisible line, it's all the straight men playing euchre, and then on the other side, it's all the gay men singing show tunes. And generally, I lean towards that side because it's more fun to sing show tunes for 2 hours. But then you have to save your voice and go on stage. But it's worth it to
yes.
not know if you're going to be able to sing just to sing show tunes the whole time.
I love that.
Yeah,
I
so,
love that.
but there have been a few productions where I was the lone gay, and so I just learned to play euchre, uh, just to fit in. But we've recruited many gays since then. I just was like, "Do you like to sing show tunes for 2 hours? I have a job for you." Um,
Yes.
yeah. So, and I'm sure we're obnoxious. I'm sure. I'm gonna just not even say I'm sure. I know that we're
Yeah.
obnoxious, but we're fun. We're a fun
Right.
group. Yes.
You're living your best life, and that's all you can do.
That's all you can do. And the coolest part about our venue, it's at the, I'm afraid to say this name because we're going to get hate, but it's at the DeVos Center. And yes, that DeVos owns it. But the theater itself, backstage, is massive. Like, it's like a city in and of itself.
Mm.
So our dressing room is downstairs with the symphony, one next door. So the symphony's in the middle, and then the women's is on the left, and then the men's is on the right. And then actually we have like another one for people that don't identify as either, which is great. I love
Yes.
that we have that
Hmm.
option because a lot of theaters
Absolutely.
just don't have space for another dressing room. So I'm glad, but because this is ginormous, anyways, so because we're like actually like 5 miles from the stage, it feels like we can be as loud as we want. And
Yes,
that's
that's
amazing.
important.
So we
Hmm.
don't have to sit there quietly for 2 hours because we have done one in a smaller venue and we literally had to just sit there and be silent. And that's
Oh
not near as
no.
fun.
No, that won't do.
No, we were actually just texting each other song lyrics. So, like, we're singing
So
this
you
one as
made
soon
it
as it's
work.
over. Oh, yes, absolutely. All right. So we're going to dive into our game. I'm sure this is like episode 10, I think. So everyone knows the game
Yes.
by now. So I'm not going to explain the game again. Basically, it's like 10 questions that we're going to get just to know Nellie better. You ready?
I am so ready.
All right. First one is very important. What is your favorite color?
Ooh, I think my favorite color is purple.
Good choice.
I say think because I almost said green. I wear a lot of green. I live with a lot of green, but purple is like a power color of mine, and I
I
think
love
it's my
that.
favorite. Yeah.
Good choice. The next one I already asked, but we'll ask just for clarification. What are your pronouns?
Yes, thank you for asking. My pronouns are she, her.
All right, this one I love. It's a bucket list question. A bucket list question. One place you hope to visit before you die.
I think somewhere in the UK, but I'm feeling really specifically the West End.
Nice. Have you been
Yeah.
to London before?
No, no. The only
Oh,
place I've been out of the States is Italy.
that's
Oh, that's
amazing.
a lie. And Canada. I've been to Canada.
Fair. Us
Um,
northern U.S. people, though, we're like, Canada's like 10 minutes away.
I know
It
it
doesn't
doesn't feel,
feel like
yeah.
you're going to another country. Like, I know you are, but I can get to Canada faster than I can get to Ohio. So it
Right.
doesn't feel,
Yeah,
yeah, it doesn't feel that, I don't know, far away for
totally.
me. Yeah.
It
Uh,
does not.
I went to London in 2021 and it was amazing and I highly recommend it. And one thing,
Yeah.
I'm going to just throw this out there because I hopefully there's some investor listening. I loved the West End ticket prices way more than I love Broadway ticket prices.
Yes,
Like
no kidding.
they're a,
Accessibility.
yeah, part of it is because the government subsidizes it. So like literally Hamilton tickets were $20. And I was like,
Mm-mm.
what is my life? Why aren't Hamilton tickets $20 in the United States? So I went
Right.
for 8 days. I saw 8 shows. And everyone's like, how did you afford that? I was like, the most I paid for a ticket was like, I think $50.
Whoa.
Right. And I was a good seat.
Wow.
That was like my splurge. But the rest of them, I went for like between 20 and $30. And I was like, that's amazing. The splurge was Andrew Lloyd Webber's Cinderella because that was kind of why I went. And now he's bringing it to Broadway, and it's totally changing. So I'm excited to go
Oh.
and see how they compare, see what the changes are.
Do
Uh,
you think they're going to renovate that theater to do that seat magic that I remember
oh,
you telling me about?
yeah, I hope so because that was my favorite part. Mostly, so those of you that don't know, I might wreck this for someone. So if you don't
Yeah,
want to know,
spoilers.
just go ahead, skip ahead a little bit. So there's this one part, and I didn't know this was happening, and it was literally probably like the most like excited I've ever been in my entire life. So we were in the theater, and they said like when you go in and you sit on the main floor, they're like, at intermission, you have to be back in your seat at the end of intermission or you can't come back in. And I was like, okay, calm down. But they were like very adamant and they're like, you have to be in your seat. And I was like, okay, relax. So, and even when when we were leaving at intermission, like I left to go to the restroom, they're like, you have to be back in 9 minutes. And I was like, I got it. Okay. So,
This is not my first rodeo.
right. And plus I wouldn't like, I would like, if my options were to like miss part of the show or hold it, like I'm gonna hold it. So it's fine. I had time.
Totally.
So, and the theaters in the West End primarily are all a lot smaller than the United States ones. So the bathroom line wasn't that bad. Anyways, so I come back and we're sitting and the show's starting and I feel myself moving. And I honestly, we hadn't eaten dinner. That was one thing that was weird about London. I couldn't get my schedule right for eating, and none of the restaurants were open after the shows really.
Oh,
So like you either had to like eat or really weird dinner time for me, which was basically like noon, or like just kind of like go back to the hotel and eat after. And we weren't hungry, so we're like, let's just not eat. We're fine. So
yeah.
so we started moving, and I literally thought I was passing out. I was like, "Am I passing out right now?" Like, because we didn't eat dinner, because I was starving by intermission, and I literally thought I was passing out. But then I realized everything was moving, and I was like, "Nope." I either accidentally took mushrooms or everything is moving. So everything started to move, and he does this cool part. So the theater is very normal theater at the beginning, and then all of the seats on the floor move and it becomes theater in the round for act two. And it was crazy. And it's during the ballroom scene, so all the dancers are spinning and dancing, and then you're spinning basically and dancing around them. So it's a very weird moment where you're like, am I moving? Are they moving? What is moving?
Oh,
And it's such a fluid, smooth movement, too, that it took me like a minute to realize, oh my God, we're moving.
oh yeah.
And it was the coolest thing ever. So then all of a sudden you're basically on a West End stage. Yes, I'm adding that to my credits, and
Absolutely.
yeah, uh, and then it was really cool. And then not to give too much away, but Cinderella has a really big song after that, and it was so cool to have this really moving, powerful song where it's in the round so everyone feels like they can reach out and touch her and be with her for this moment. And then after that song, it goes back. And it was amazing. So they better keep that. Someone on Broadway
Yeah.
needs to pay for that to happen.
Yep. That's magic.
That was
That's
magic. It
very
was
cool.
one of the coolest experiences ever. And I know for a long time they tried to keep it a secret, but there's videos on YouTube of it now. So yeah, secret's
Secret's out.
out. Yeah, unfortunately. Um, but yeah, that was amazing. All right, sorry, I got on a tangent there. Back to you.
Please.
Back to Nellie.
I'm I'm glad to go.
There's going to be a few of those on this journey. Every
Yeah.
single episode, I'm like, I'm not going to talk that much. And then, what's the point of me having a podcast if I can't talk? Uh,
Right.
all right,
Right.
you
That
ready?
is the whole point.
That is true.
Yes.
What was your favorite childhood toy?
My instinct. No, I'm gonna go. You know what? My favorite childhood toy, I think, was tea bunnies. You remember tea
I
bunnies?
do not know. Fill me in.
Little plastic, maybe the size of your palm,
Okay.
bunnies, for lack of a better word, little rabbit of various pastel colors.
I love
And
this.
they had these like long ears so that a hat could go over them, like a wide brim hat.
Okay.
And the hats were always wackily decorated. And the whole concept of why they were called tea bunnies is that they then would sit inside of a little teacup and the hat would like go on as a lid to this little teacup. And it was just a little bunny that lived in this little teacup, and it was adorable.
That is adorable.
They
I'm going to
were
Google
tea
this when we're
bunnies.
done because I need to see what
Yeah.
tea bunnies are. That's also a very British thing. So you can bring your tea bunnies
Yeah.
with you when you go to England.
Whoa, yes, it
Yeah.
is very British. I didn't realize I've got such a British
Yeah.
like instinct. Yeah.
So I will say that was my favorite part of being in London was tea time. Yes, I participated every day. I didn't even care. I was like, yes, this is so amazing. I'm doing this all the time. First of all, I had never had a British scone,
Oh,
and
yeah.
if you've never had one, I highly recommend. Very different than American scones. I think I ate like 6 a day. Like, I'm not even gonna lie. Like, they were so good. And the time of the day where everywhere has them is at tea time. So I like that. And that one day we did tea time at the Palace, which that was
Oh,
amazing. And
a dream.
yeah, I was like, I feel so fancy right now. And it wasn't even planned. Like, we just were at the Palace and then it was tea time and they had like a little tea place. And I was like, yes, we're having tea at the Palace, 100%.
Yes.
Yeah.
Were you putting milk in your tea or were you just having straight tea?
This time, it depended on the day. But most of the time I
Oh,
just had straight tea because their tea wasn't
yeah.
as, I don't know, it wasn't as strong as our tea. So it was very light. So you didn't have to
Hmm.
like add a bunch of stuff to it for it to taste good.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it was a very light tea and I enjoyed it. And maybe that was why I didn't ever want I can't talk. Maybe that was why I didn't ever want dinner before the show because I had had like 3 scones at
Yeah.
3 o'clock.
Yeah,
But
I think you might be onto
I
something.
might be onto something. Yes. Uh, but it was still worth it. It was worth it. And I tried a crumpet, which I didn't really know what a crumpet was. Those weren't as exciting to me as the scones, but
No. Is a crumpet just an English muffin?
basically, yes, but a
Okay.
drier English muffin.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
Okay.
that wasn't my jam, but I had to try it one day because I was there.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah. All right. This next one I'm interested in. Ready? What do you find the most attractive in a person, in a partner?
Mm, I would say a good sense of humor, a very like solid, confident sense of humor.
Yes.
But also the eyes. Love a
Oh,
good,
nice.
love a good stare down.
A good stare down. I love that. That's hilarious. Because I
And
know your
sparkle in the
partner,
eye.
I think you succeeded in both of those. I think she has very
Yes,
beautiful eyes and she's funny. So
I think so
I
too.
think you did good on both of your things. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
I am going to say that I would want the ability to, I guess, transport maybe is the word. Like, I wiggle my nose and suddenly I am somewhere else.
I love that.
Yeah, I want to stop walking, I suppose, and having
Same.
to travel on my own. I'd like to not do anymore. So I think it would be, yeah,
I,
snapping my fingers, wiggling my nose or something, and then I am somewhere else.
I get that. I have been spending a lot of time in New York City lately, and I used to live there, but it had been a long time since I spent a lot of time there, and I forgot how much I walk, and I forgot how much I don't
Mm.
really like walking.
Yes.
Especially in like New York City in July when it's like 8,000 degrees. And I'm just like,
Oh,
why
yeah.
am I doing this? This last time, when we were there for the workshop, I had someone pay for my transportation costs. So yes, I took an Uber everywhere. No shade. Like, yeah.
Absolutely.
Plus, I had a lot of stuff to carry. Like I had my piano and my ukulele and a speaker and props. And so logistically, because I tried to do it one day on the subway and the profanity that came
Oh,
out of my
no.
mouth was inappropriate. So I was like, I'm taking an Uber the rest of the week.
And was it a cold month? So you're like bundled up as well.
Yes. And that was weird too. That whole week, the weather was weird. One day it would be in the 60s, and then the next day it would be snowing. I was like, can we make up
Oh,
our
no.
mind? I don't know how to dress.
No.
So, and I didn't bring a winter coat because I didn't think that it was going to be that cold. Like I had looked and it looked like it was going to be in the 50s and 60s. So I just brought a jacket,
Oh, no.
which I think subconsciously I just wanted to buy a cute coat in New York. So that was
Oh,
what I
yeah.
did. So I was like, and I wore it the rest of the winter. So I'm still wearing it. It's
Well,
still
you
winter.
needed it.
I needed
Yeah.
it. It's cute. Um, and I got it at H&M, so thank you at H&M. And my partner was very annoyed by that because we went to like 4 stores and I was freezing, but I didn't want to spend money on a coat that I didn't like. And he's like, "Would you just buy a coat?" He's like, "We're gonna have to walk 6 blocks to the next store." And I was like, "I know, but I don't like this coat." He's like, "Just buy
Mm.
a coat. You're cold." And I was like, but finally I found one that was cute and affordable and that I've worn all winter. So
Yes. Thanks, H&M.
thank you, H&M. Not sponsored by H&M, but if they would like to sponsor us, they can call me. What was the last concert you attended?
Last concert I went to was actually this summer. I want to say it was August. It was Brandy Carlisle and Ani
Ooh,
DeFranco. And I can't remember the actual name of the venue. This is so bad. Somewhere in the city in Chicago, a big outdoor venue.
Nice.
And it was amazing. I don't know if you've ever seen Brandy Carlisle live, but she is the best.
I have not, but I love her, and I've heard from many people that I need to see her live. So it is on my list.
Yes, it is so worth it. This was actually the third time that my girlfriend and I have gone to see her, and she's perfect. It was so fun.
Yeah, her voice is very powerful. I would love to
Mm,
experience that live.
hmm
Yes. The
hmm
closest I got was when I saw Ben Platt. He covered what's her big song from a couple years ago?
Oh, the
This
story that
Yes, I
was
think it was
many
the
years
story.
ago. Okay,
Yeah, I think it
okay.
was the story, and that was brilliant. He did an excellent job on that. He called it her. What did he call her? His queero, or something like that, instead
I
of
love that.
hero. Like she's my queero, and I thought that was adorable. But he sang the heck out of it. But yeah, she's on my list to do that. All right, what household chore do you hate the most?
Without a doubt, dishes.
Ooh, different answer. I love that. Everyone has said putting away laundry so far.
No, I mean, I wouldn't say that I love putting away laundry, but I would do it every single day to never have to do the dishes again.
I I'm sort of with you on that. So here's a side thing. My partner and I live alone together, and I guess that makes sense. It's just the two of us. That's a better way to
Yeah,
word that. Because alone
alone
together,
together.
that doesn't make sense. And he doesn't like to use the dishwasher because he doesn't think we use enough dishes to justify the dishwasher. I know
Whoa.
this is a war in our house. And so when I have to do the dishes, I have to like actually like do the dishes. Yeah, and I'm like, well, let's just let it like pile up, and like then at the end of the week, like not pile up, but like in the dishwasher, right? And then at the end of
Yes,
the week, just run it once. But he's like,
of course.
that's ridiculous, and I don't want to have dirty dishes in the house all week. And he goes on this whole long thing about it. So I, for the most
Oh
part,
yeah.
just take a back seat and I'll just do the dishes, generally like old school style, like in the thing. So I'm with you on that. So sometimes if I'm in a mood, I will be like, you do the dishes, I cooked, and I want to use the dishwasher so you can decide how this is happening. Um,
Absolutely.
yes.
Absolutely. If we have a dishwasher, we're using it.
Right.
Though I am of the camp that like you've got to rinse that dish basically completely clean before it
Right.
goes in the dishwasher.
So
Yeah.
basically, then, like, I'm doing it twice. So I get his logic. I get it. We don't use that many dishes, to be honest, because generally we work very different work schedules. So very rarely is there like a meal that we sit down and like eat together and like have a
Yep.
bunch, generally on the weekends. But during the week, we really don't use that many dishes. It's like kind of eat on the fly. I ate a sandwich on the way out the door type thing. So it
Yes.
is justified. But when I cook a big meal, sometimes I'm like, "Ugh, I don't want to do all these dishes." But anyways,
I
so I
always
feel you.
my biggest problem with dishes is that I have yet to find a sink that is at the proper height to not give me back pain like 2 minutes into doing the
Oh,
dishes.
that's
It's just
brutal.
like either too low. Well, it's always too low. It's never too high. It's just too low. The sinks are too low.
I agree. See, I feel you on that. Good answer. It was different. I appreciate that. What was your first job?
My first job, I was a camp counselor at a dance camp, actually.
I
It was the
love that.
first.
That
Yeah.
fits you. That fits you very much. Are you a
I
dancer? I've
know.
never seen you dance.
I'm not a dancer. I mean, I took dance classes growing up,
Yeah.
um, and I consider myself a strong mover, but a dancer I am not. And I
Yeah.
also certainly was not a dancer at the time of this job. I was in high school,
Okay.
um, but I was taking a tap class, and my tap teacher at the time was in charge of the dance camp.
Oh,
And
nice.
she was like, "You want to work at dance camp?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to." So
That's awesome.
yeah, it was basically child wrangling and kind of, I think every once in a while we would help them learn some of the dances they were learning from a teacher. But like,
Okay.
I was certainly not in charge of teaching any dance.
Fair. But that's a good first job. Like that's fun. That's better than working at McDonald's. At least more
Yes.
interesting. I did work at
Yeah.
McDonald's. That was not my first job, but I did work there. And it actually
Nice.
wasn't that bad. Like
Oh,
everybody,
really?
I feel like the worst part of it was like everyone else judging me when I told them I worked at McDonald's. But I was like,
Oh,
I
really?
am 17 years old. Like it's not like I have like a lot of options, but people shame you like, ew, McDonald's. And I was like, I'm 17 and I need money to go to the movies. It wasn't
Right.
right. It
And
wasn't.
I'd imagine you'd get a meal out of that, right?
You
They
do
let you
get a
eat.
meal out of that. Yeah,
There you go.
which wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it really wasn't that bad. Like, and the team I worked with was really nice, and I really liked our manager, Tammy, who I'm still friends with. Hey, Tammy.
Hey,
And
Tammy.
yeah, so it wasn't that bad. But I will say the worst part was everyone like, "You work at McDonald's?"
Oh,
And I mostly did it because I could walk there because I didn't have a car. So
oh,
yeah.
that's big.
So it was like I could walk there in 5 minutes and I'm making money. It wasn't that.
Right.
It was probably longer than 5 minutes, but it wasn't a long walk. 10. We're going to give myself 10. But it was close to my house.
The walk is getting a little less manageable for me, but
Yeah. You're like
okay.
10 minutes. And then halfway through that job, I did get a car. And then, like, literally, as soon as I got a car, I was like, and I'm quitting. Goodbye. And then I worked at Panera. I don't know if that was that much of an upgrade.
Whoa.
Like it is like socially, but I will say Panera was a much harder job than McDonald's. And I was like, man, I should have stayed at McDonald's.
Oh, interesting. I would have thought that McDonald's maybe would have a faster pace than Panera.
No, like McDonald's, at least the one that I was at, like it was like a well-oiled machine. Like,
Hmm.
and I was perky, so they just always had me on the register.
Oh, yep.
And
Love that.
that was great. Very rarely did I work in the kitchen. I think they put me in the kitchen once and they're like, yeah, we're going to put you back on register. You messed up all of the orders. So,
Never again.
no. And then at Panera, they wouldn't let me work the register and they always had me in the kitchen. Maybe that was why I hated it. And I hated
Yeah.
working in the kitchen. Every once in a while, they'd let me work the register and I would get so excited. They would either put me on kitchen or if they really wanted to give me a bad day, they'd put me on dish and I would be,
Oh no.
I hated dishes. That was
Yep.
gross. And
Back to the
this was
dishes.
back. Well, I think Panera still does this, where like all of the dishes are like actual dishes. So like you're washing
Yes.
dishes for the whole restaurant.
Yep. This still.
The only good part about Dish was I got to pick the music that played in the back when whoever was the dishwasher person got to pick the music for the back room. So I did get
Yes.
to just blare show tunes. So that part was good. Which everyone was like, "Oh, Dave's on Dish again." I hear Legally Blonde. But I did love when the straight guys started to know the shows that I liked. Like this one's Wicked. I was like, you deserve a
Yes.
prize. Like I am impressed with you.
Giving them culture. That's
I
so
was.
sweet of you.
That was my job. Yes. I remember I literally just stopped going to Panera. Like I didn't give 2 weeks. Not my proudest moment. So,
I feel like
but
everyone's had one of those.
yeah, I liked my boss and but I didn't like anything else about the job and I was like I didn't know how to tell them I was leaving. So I just didn't. So,
Yep.
not my best moment, but it was and and it's so out of character for me that everyone was very worried about me, so that part I felt bad for.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Did you totally ghost them or did you at least like respond, I am not dead in a ditch?
Nope, just ghosted them.
Oh, love that.
Yes. So, because then I was like embarrassed. So then, I don't
Yeah.
know. I
Oh
mean, I was
yeah.
18. It wasn't like this was yesterday. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. Have
Anyways,
you ever been to that Panera again?
I
Is it
have.
your
I have.
Oh,
My best friend still worked there. So I would go up there all the time.
oh good. So she could clear the air.
She could clear the air. Um, yeah. So that was, I mean, I didn't go there right away. Like, I definitely waited a couple months and then I started to pop in again. Um, so, but she worked there forever. She worked there for like 8 years. And I was like, I don't know how you worked at Panera for
Wow,
eight
good
years.
for her.
Yeah, good.
Yep.
She deserves a medal. All right, last question. Coffee or tea?
Well, to bring it back to my tea bunnies, I'm definitely a
Yes,
tea gal.
that makes sense. I loved that connection there where you just tie those things together. That was beautifully done. Yeah,
Full circle.
yeah.
Yeah.
You are a tea gal. I love that.
Yeah, love a tea. I mean, I suppose if I'm drinking caffeine, it's typically an unsweet iced tea.
Nice.
But I do love a hot tea. Love a chai latte as well.
Same.
Yeah, definitely tea all around. Coffee, it's got to be inside of a tiramisu, and that's about it.
Good. I do love tiramisu, so
Yeah.
no shade. All right, well, this leads us to our sponsor for today. So we're going to take a moment and we're going to hear from our sponsor, and Nellie and I will be back in 1 minute. Today's sponsor is Meta and Shanti. Meta and Shanti is a wellness spa and boutique in West Michigan. They offer massage, skincare treatments, and yoga classes. They also have a boutique with fashionable clothing at affordable prices. If you're not in West Michigan, no problem. You can shop their boutique online at metaandshantiwellness.com. That's metaandshantiwellness.com. metaandshantiwellness.com. Welcome back to the Dear Mom, I'm Gay podcast. I'm here with today's guest, Nellie Shuford, and we're going to take a deeper dive into Nellie's life. So, fair warning, we're going to talk about coming out. So, if that's not something you want to listen to at this moment in your life, maybe you can skip ahead to the end. But we are going to talk about her coming out experience now. So, Nellie, tell us a little bit about your upbringing, where you grew up, what your parents did for a living, things you like to do as a kid, those kind of things.
I grew up in Wilmette, Illinois, which is a suburb on the North Shore of Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up in, proper suburbs, in a cul-de-sac, in a little neighborhood. My mom was a realtor when I was young. She was a realtor for, I feel like, maybe until I was in 5th grade. And my dad was a business consultant for, honestly, probably basically until I was in college, and now he's just a businessman of sorts that I don't understand.
Fair.
He would travel all the time. It was one of those things where he would kind of go to a company and find the things that they needed to fix and change and then make those things happen. So he was only really home on the weekends. So it was like my mom, my sibling, and I, just kind of the three of us hanging out most of the time. When I was in 5th grade is when I first did a show at the Wilmette Children's Theater.
Nice.
At the Park District. And actually, oddly enough, the show was The Sound of Music.
Whoa,
and
full circle again.
Full circle. I was Sister Sophia, and the costumer needed help making some of the nun costumes.
Oh, nice.
And my mom knew how to sew. She sewed growing up. She made her prom dress, all that. So she just kind of volunteered to help. And then I, of course, continued to do this children's theater, and year after year, they kept needing help, and they kept finding my mom, and eventually they were like, would you like to costume one of these shows? And my mom was like, I guess I could try. I've never really done something like that, but we'll see. And she just really took to it. It was a great kind of creative outlet. At this point, she wasn't working anymore, and so she's like, this gives me something to do. And so then she started costuming. That's what she does now, kind of as a career, is she costumes for local theaters. She mainly did children's theater for many years of my life, and then kind of worked at the Wilmette Adult Theater, the just community theater, and now she's all over the kind of north suburbs of Chicago.
That's
costuming.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I had forgotten about that, because one of the dresses that we made for the show, your mom fixed, and it came back to me now that you said that story. So to your mom fixing our button, I appreciate that.
Yes, I forgot all about that too. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
It was a dire situation, and your mom came through. So thank you, Nellie's mom.
Yeah, she's always got some kind of needle and thread with her, it seems. So.
We need those people in the world. Yes.
Exactly, yes. But yeah, actually, because of that, I spent a lot of time with my mom, even doing my extracurricular activities. We would go to rehearsals. I would have, children's theater rehearsal from 4:30 to 6:30 after school every day. It was 2 shows a year, so it kind of took up the big seasons, and she would go to rehearsal and watch, do the costuming. I'd be doing the thing, and we spent a lot of time together doing that, all through, honestly, like middle school and high school. Because then I started doing the just community theaters. At that point, she was costuming those. So we would just go to rehearsals together and
I love that. That's a good
spend a lot
bonding
of
thing
time.
for you
It
both.
was.
Yeah.
It was. Yeah. Yeah. It was really a nice thing. We had then a lot of kind of mutual friends. We still do, because of that,
I love
which is
that.
nice. Mm-hmm.
That's so cool. All right. Next question. I should ask this before I ask this question so I know how to phrase this. How do you identify what letter of the LGBTQ plus best fits Nellie?
Yes, I identify as a lesbian. I mean,
Awesome.
I think if some people ask, I'll be like, oh, I'm gay, but yeah, I identify as a lesbian.
Fair. I was pretty sure, but I just wanted to make sure we got it right for the question. All right.
Yeah.
When did you realize that you were a lesbian?
I really realized my senior year of high school.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I had a friend come out to another friend and I, probably like winter break of that senior year. And when she came out, there was something, I found myself thinking about her a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just kind of wanted to hang out with her and wanted to spend time with her. And I didn't make a connection to it at all. And I started to find myself thinking about like kissing her. And I
Mm-hmm.
didn't think like, oh, this is gay. I was just like, oh, I want to kiss her.
Fair.
And then one day she kissed me,
Whoa.
and it was almost that moment. It still actually didn't hit me. I was just like, oh, that was nice. And I enjoyed that. And I had actually never really kissed a boy before then.
So kissing was new in general. Yeah.
Kissing was new in general. I had done stage kissing with boys before, and like that was it. I had never really had a crush. I would like maybe every few years like pick a friend to just give as my answer
Mm-hmm.
when all of your friends are like, who's your crush, and I'd be
Yes.
like, well, let's see. um, but it
Fair.
was not like a conscious decision. I just thought, I don't know, I'm not interested. And my mom was also really adamant about raising me to be like this independent woman who like didn't need a man. And
Mm-hmm.
she was very like, you should be single for a while. You need to grow up and know yourself. And like, you need to grow up and be a single person and an individual before you even consider trying to be with someone else. So the idea of me dating, even in, middle school or high school, would be like, oh, that's just not, you're not going to date in high school because you're not a fully formed human yet, right? You need to be
Right.
single. So I kind of could use that as an excuse. I was like, oh, my parents won't let me date till I'm 16, which no one had actually said.
You just made the rule yourself.
I just made the rule myself, and it again didn't really occur to me. I was like, yeah, I'm just not interested. And I had a few male friends that were out to me, and I had also other gay, mostly male gay influences in my life from the theater.
Yeah.
Certainly in high school, but the actual connection even didn't come when I then kissed my friend. It was actually like a few months later. We then kind of got into a routine of like hooking up and hanging out.
Yeah.
And I just was thinking, I don't know what this is. I'm just doing me. I'm living my life, like whatever. I'm not going to think about it. I'm not going to overthink it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was the 4th of July. We were all hanging out with friends. We did like, going to the beach, watching the fireworks. And I remember feeling really jealous because I felt like my friend Colleen, I guess I can use her name. I felt like and I mean, who knows at this point? I felt like she was flirting with somebody else or giving somebody else attention.
Okay.
And I found myself feeling jealous. And I was like, wait, if I'm really jealous, I think I have feelings for her.
Uh-huh.
And then I was like, wait, I think I'm gay. And it was like all came together on the 4th of July.
Of course. Oh, it's always on the 4th of July, obviously.
Of course.
Yes.
Of course it is. Yeah. And even, yeah, I mean, it was probably at least like 2 months of us kind of, like hooking up before it made the connection of like, oh, I think, and then of course things from my youth kind of clicked together. There were friends from middle school that I thought, oh, I probably had a crush on them.
Mm-hmm.
And like it slowly kind of started to make sense. But it was kind of a whirlwind where once I realized it, I kind of realized it. I was like,
Nice.
oh, this is it. I started to tell friends that I was like hooking up with a girl.
Mm-hmm.
And so it kind of just slowly started to happen in that way. But yeah, senior year. I think
I love that.
I was 17. Yeah.
17.
Mhm.
Wow. That's a good story. I like that. It's just kind of like, I was surprised. I feel like for a lot of people, it is kind of like an aha moment. Like like the attraction's kind of there, but there is like this moment where you admit it to yourself. Because the attraction's there, I think, long before we admit it to ourselves, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Um,
Well, and I think that I had always assumed if I was gay, I would just know it. I would know I'm gay. But being a kid that assumed I was straight, I didn't really know I was straight. It was just I was told I was straight, and I was like, well, okay.
okay.
Yeah, and so it was literally, it just was an aha moment. I had a friend that had kind of come out to me either, yeah, I think it was probably around the same year, same like summer kind of.
Mm-hmm.
And his was same thing. Everyone kind of thought he was gay, and he's like, no, I'm not. And they're like, okay. And then he was watching, I think, the show Brothers and Sisters, and something had happened in it, and it literally just clicked. He had the moment, and he
Yeah.
called me, and he's like, "Oh, I'm gay," and I was like, "Cool." And it was just a moment, and it didn't feel. I'm lucky in that because of the people I was surrounded with, it didn't feel wrong when
Good.
I had the realization. It just felt like, oh, okay.
No, that's good. It's good to not have the
Yeah,
shame around it, just to be able to like this is what it is.
yeah,
That's what I'm hoping, and I think it is getting better. It's a lot better than when I was young,
oh
and I'm
yeah,
hoping that we continue that, where it's not this big moment for people. It's just like, yep, I'm gay. Next,
yeah.
this is who I'm dating. Welcome. Like, I hope we get there as a society. That would be my dream. All
Mhm.
right, you kind of answered this, but I think you answered this. Who was the first person you came out to?
Well, I think actually came out would be um, on the 4th of July. I was talking to my friend Chrissy, and she was kind of the mutual friend between Colleen and I, and it was me saying like she at this point knew that we had been like hooking up,
Mm-hmm.
um, but I had yet to say to her any kind of coming out. But this was when I said like I'm realizing I have feelings for her, and I think I might be gay. I then kind of came out to some of my friends as bisexual, actually, because it felt at the time like an easier thing to, which I'm sure, I don't know if you've had people say this before, but it's something you've heard, like a
Yeah,
stepping stone.
yeah. I
Um,
did that as well. And I think for me at the time, I wasn't like very, I don't know how to say this, but I wasn't very sexually aware, if that makes sense. So
yeah,
I did still find women attractive. It just took me a while to realize, like, oh, I'm not sexually attracted to women. And
yes.
so at the time, I don't think bi was like a band-aid, like some people say. I think I genuinely was still figuring it out.
Oh,
And
yes.
bi just felt right for that moment. But you are right. There is
Fair.
kind of a, it's not as like firm, right? If you say you're bi, you can wiggle your way out of it if you have to, I guess.
Yeah, which in retrospect is awful. And like, I know
Right,
it's actually a lot of people have a really hard time being accepted as being bisexual. So it is kind of interesting now. You're like, I
right.
don't know, it might be easier actually to go the other way.
Yes.
Um, but I actually agree with you too. There was a little part of me that was like, I didn't consider being gay really until a girl kissed me. And like, yeah, exactly. We had something that was sexual attraction. So I guess I don't actually know that I don't like men because I just haven't had that with a man,
Fair.
um, until I eventually was like, I guess I'm just not interested in doing that with a man.
Yeah, and I have had straight people, because I've never really done anything with a woman either. I've had people say, "Well, don't you have to try it to know?" And I was like, "Great, let me get you a grinder profile and you can try it and you can let me know how that goes for you." And
Yep.
but I do think there is a lack of interest, right? At some point you're like,
Yeah.
"I don't have to try something to know that I'm not interested in that."
Right. Yes. 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 That's exactly it.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. Yep.
Yeah, so I'm with you on that. But I have had many, and it's generally a straight guy that's like, "How do you know if you haven't done it?" And I'm like, I just it's not my jam. How do you know you're not
Yeah.
gay if you haven't done it? And then I always wonder, have they had gay experiences? Is that how they figured out they were
Is that how
straight?
they know?
Is
Yeah.
that how they know? I don't think so. But it just always makes me laugh that I was like, you don't have to like experience something to know whether or not you're interested in it. I knew I
Right.
hated math before my first math class.
Yes.
I didn't know the word for it, but I figured it out pretty quick. I'm like, oh, this is the numbers one.
Yeah.
Not my thing.
This is not for me.
Yeah. When did you come out to your parents and how did they respond?
I came out to my parents. So this me realizing I was gay was the summer, like end of senior year, summer going into my freshman year of college.
Okay.
And actually, Colleen and I were kind of dating. We were dating going into college, and like for most of our freshman year of college, we were at two different schools. I was at Butler University down in Indianapolis,
Mm-hmm.
and she was at Notre Dame. So we were maybe like 2 hours away. We were doing the long distance thing, whatever. And I knew I would come out to my parents. I just hadn't done it yet. And
Mm-hmm.
it felt like I'm away at college. They're not interacting with me on the daily basis. The like phone calls and the times that I do see them, it's not something that's coming up. So I didn't feel like I was like hiding myself.
Right.
Or at least maybe I had convinced myself I wasn't hiding myself, I suppose. I just thought it's not important right now for them to know. I'm living my life. I'm figuring this out. And when they need to know, they'll know. And then it was Thanksgiving break of that year. And Colleen, if I'm remembering correctly, I think she was going to come home and not see her family. She was like just going to come home and hang out with me and my family. Because I don't think we had a full week of a break. It was maybe a few days or whatever.
Okay.
And I thought, okay, at this point now, it will be lying to my parents. And so now maybe I should say something to them. I did what I consider to be not really the best way of coming out. And I do sometimes feel a little bit of regret in it, to be totally honest. Because I just, when Facebook, you used to be able to send a video message in a private message on Facebook.
Okay.
I don't know if you still can, but you could like record a little video message.
All right.
And so I recorded a video message to privately send to my mom on Facebook as a way of coming out to her. Granted, as you can tell when I was talking about growing up, my mom and I had a great relationship.
Uh-huh.
And we probably talked like once a week. They came to visit occasionally when I was in college, like whenever there was an event to come visit. So we had pretty frequent communication, but at the time I just hated the idea of coming out.
Yes.
The idea of having to explain myself. You talked about what you dream for the future, like that. The idea of like no one having to come out, or rather everyone having to come out. Like if you have to
Yes.
come out as straight, you have to, whatever. Like I hated the idea of having to explain myself. And especially in something that like kind of felt like it didn't have to do with my parents. Like we've not talked about my like sexual activity
Right.
before now. So why would we start now? But I knew that my mom would accept me, and my mom had accepted my like gay friends at that point. My mom had always been really just kind of like, okay, yes, and like I loved them before and I'll still love them now. And
I love that.
so I knew I was going into, I suppose, like a safe space. There was a lot of anxiety there about having the actual conversation.
Mm-hmm.
The potential to be emotional was something that I was like, I didn't really want to have to deal with. I didn't want to have to deal with like, I guess having this kind of emotional conversation with my mom where I have to explain myself and whatever. And so I thought, well, it'll be easier if I just send her a little video. So I sent her a little video just saying, she knew Colleen. So I said,
Okay.
Colleen and I are dating. We've been dating for, a few months, this, that, and the other. I said, I don't know. I think I said to her, I think I might be bi, but I don't really know. And, just wanted you to know, I'll see you in a week. Like, it was like, okay, see you later. It's like overly casual. And then I get a text message from my mom saying, call me. And I respond with, do I have to? She responds with, yes. So I call her and she's like, oh, of course I got your video, and like, of course that's totally fine. Like, she's like, I kind of almost had a little bit of a suspicion because Colleen was around a lot last year, and
Hmm.
whatever. And she was just like, why didn't you want to tell me over the phone, or in person? Why did you? And I said, at the time it was something I was too scared to do it, and I could opt for the easier way out. And so I
Yeah.
did. And I was like, I don't know. This is the way I chose. Um, so we had a really, a brief conversation. It wasn't a lot. It was it was affirming. Definitely something that, well, of course, everyone wants to hear. But it was, it was just very reassuring, very affirming. We did kind of, the question of telling my brother and my dad kind of came up because she was like, okay, are you going to tell the rest of the family? And I was like, I'm certain at some point, yes, but I suppose I don't really know when. I don't really have a plan to. And, I did then find out when I came home for Thanksgiving that my mom did then just tell them for me,
Okay. My mom kind of
which,
did that too, and
uh,
my mom didn't do it in a, I don't know, in a weird way or a mean way. I think she just knew for me it was very emotional, and I think it was just easier for her to just tell people. She didn't tell my dad, but she did tell my grandma and other people. And in all honesty, in a way, I think my mom needed support, so it allowed her to talk
yeah,
to somebody about it. But it
totally.
also, look, in hindsight, I'm glad I didn't have to have that conversation with my grandma.
Yeah.
After my mom told my grandma just sent me a card that said "I love you," and that was it.
Oh,
That was the only time my grandma and I ever talked about it.
oh,
And she did. I did take my partner to my cousin's wedding, which that was a whole thing. Like half the family was very divided on that. But my cousin called me and she's like, "I don't care if other people have a problem with it. Bring him. It's my
yes,
wedding." So I was like, "Thank you." So I did, and my grandma
yes.
met him at the wedding, and it was like the most awkward moment of my entire existence. And it was funny because I had assumed that was after I had been out for a couple of years, and I had assumed that like between my mom knowing and my grandma knowing that like everyone in my family kind of knew, and I was like out on Facebook, like it wasn't like a
Yeah,
thing. And
yep.
I had my cousin Brad, who, oh, I don't know if I should say his name, but I already did. Too late. Anyway, so I had my cousin Brad come over, and he came over to our table, and we're chatting, and I don't see Brad very often. It's like probably like at a wedding or a funeral, and that's the extent of my interaction with my cousin Brad. And he came over, and we're talking, and my partner's sitting next to me, and he literally, and I didn't introduce him, and I don't know why. It wasn't, I don't know, it was just a quick moment, right? It wasn't anything big. And he's like, "And who's this?" And I was like, "Oh, this is my boyfriend." And the look in his eyes was, I'll never forget it. Like I saw him process it, and he literally just left. It was the most awkward thing of my life. And then he came up like 10 minutes later, and he's like, "I'm sorry." He's like, "That was not how to handle it." He's like, I didn't know, and I didn't know how to process it in the moment." And I was like, "You're good." But he was like, "Oh,
Wow.
I'm gonna get a drink." Like literally, he just like left. So
Whoa, good for him for coming back.
yes, I
I
did
don't know if I
appreciate
would
that. Yes, and we have seen him since, and I've brought my partner things since, and he's very, very cordial. But I wish that I had a video of his eyes and his like brain like figuring it out, and then just leaving. Um,
have. Totally.
yeah,
It's like,
so
cannot compute. Gotta go.
yeah, it was literally like he shut down. And I know like in his world at the time, like he was, I don't know what branch in the military he was in. I don't remember, but he was in the military, and it just like wasn't part of his like existence, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
still to this day don't think he knows or talks to anybody else that's gay other than me. So your mom kind of told your brother
Yes.
and your dad, let's get back to
Yep.
you. Eh,
Yes. So yeah, so she told them, and I actually what you said is rings very true to me. Where I was a little relieved, to be honest, about not having to have the conversation myself.
uh-huh.
I was a little bit like, oh, okay, we could have maybe like agreed on this, but
Yeah.
maybe I do think she part of it was like Nellie doesn't seem to feel that she needs to explain herself, or for whatever reason Nellie, isn't wanting to necessarily do this. And so I think part of it was my mom being like, I'm just going to rip this band-aid off, or I'm just going to tell them, because it's not a big deal, and because it is just it's just something I think my mom was almost in a way like normalizing it by doing that, by being like,
Yeah.
it's not going to be like a secret we're going to have, I'm just going to go ahead and tell them.
In a way, I
Which
love
and then
that. That she's just
yeah,
so like it's not a thing. Like let's just acknowledge it and move on. I think that's great.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, and I did instantly feel. I mean, we didn't. My dad and I never really talked about it, but I then he consistently showed support, and has since he enjoyed. I suppose he was very nice and cordial to like my girlfriends in the past. My partner now, he and her are like very good buddies. Like they,
I love
they get
that.
along really well. Yeah, she um, probably spends more time kind of entertaining my parents, if you will, than I do these days, which is great.
Yeah.
We currently actually live in their basement, so like we do spend a lot of time with my family, and my family is really it's not a question, and it doesn't feel weird at this point. And actually, it never really did. It just was something that was a little maybe untalked about.
Mhm.
But I never felt like, I'm not sure how they feel. I always knew they were all okay with it, whether or not it was like we have the language to like sit around and talk about it, or even the emotional capacity. It's an emotional thing, and my family's
Right.
just not ever been one for like emotional conversations, maybe.
Yeah.
So
That's
yeah,
such a nice refreshing story compared to some
yeah,
of the other ones that I've heard doing this. And I love that there are people like you where your family didn't make it a thing. I think that's amazing. And
yeah,
that they were just able to accept you. And I think it helped that I don't know your dad's life story, but I think that it helped that your mom had been in the arts and exposed to it and it had known people that before you that were thriving and living their best life after coming out. And I think that helps when people can see. Because I think in the 90s and 2000s, especially in the 90s, like if you came out, everyone just assumed you were going to get AIDS and die, which is sad. And unfortunately,
right.
for many people, that was their reality. But it's nice now that we have this more optimistic outlook on that. And that for most people, I'm not going to say most people, but for a lot of people, it's easier for them to just accept it as a fact of life rather than this big production.
Yes. Oh
Yes.
yeah, I was it is refreshing, and I felt like at the time I knew I had like such a privilege to feel safe and comfortable, like knowing that when I come out to them that it will be okay. And it was nice, yeah, to have that. Like I was saying, my mom and some of my friends from the children's theater, that they grew up kind of working with her in some ways, and they're friends that I actually still have now. And she could be kind of that really like accepting presence for them too. Was nice. It felt nice, and I felt like proud to have my parents as my parents.
I love that. Yeah, parents like that are amazing because I think for me, I had a couple friends that had parents that were more accepting and having that parental figure during that time, even if it wasn't my parent, really made a big difference in my life. So I love that your
Yeah.
mom was that parent to other people. And oddly enough, weird thing, the woman that in my show, not that this podcast has to be all about my show, but that Nellie played at the two workshops was that mom for me. And
Mm.
she was the first parent person that I told. And I actually This is a new thing that Nellie doesn't know yet. One of some of the feedback I got in New York was people wanted to see that relationship grow between Dan, that's the character. I know it's very far from Dave, between Dan and Mrs. Atkins. So we
Mm.
added that scene, and
Oh, I
it's a
love that.
very special. And not to give too much away, but she gives him something, and Shonda later finds the thing that she gives him in the shoebox.
Oh,
So yeah,
that's
so
so
we
true.
added that nice connection because that was some of the feedback I got. That was they wanted to see more of a connection with Dan relating to all of the characters, and there really wasn't a moment where Dan and Mrs. Atkins connected.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think we haven't tried that scene yet. Off Broadway will be where that'll be where we try it. But I think it's nice. I think it's a really cute scene. And another feedback that we got was Act One kind of moves quick, and then Act Two slows down. So I also
Mm.
think it helps with the pacing of Act One. It gives Dan a little bit more of a journey that he goes on before the date, if that makes sense. So yeah, I actually really love that scene, and I can't
I
wait
really like that.
to add that in and see if it helps the audience connect those two characters since he's so connected to everybody else. But yes, other people's parents filling in on that role for even if it's just for that short time while your parents are adjusting, I
Mhm.
think is really
Mhm.
important. All right, Nellie, if you could tell LGBTQ plus youth anything, what would it be?
I think it would be to be yourself because it's a lot easier than trying to be someone else. Um, and to actually try to find like mm, let me think of the way I want to phrase this to help I think to foster a confidence in yourself that you know you can carry throughout the rest of your life because
Hmm.
you are going to be your number one for the rest of your life. It's you and you, right?
Yeah,
So you want to be your number one fan, you want to be your best friend, you want to be able to be all of those things for yourself. So I think yeah, be yourself and feel confident in who you are.
I love that. All right, this
You
next
got it
one
there.
could be taken either way, so I'll let you decide how you want to answer it. What are your dreams for the future? They can be your personal dreams, dreams for the country, dreams for the world. Just what does Nellie dream about for the future?
Hmm. My dream, we talked a little bit about the future of the world at large,
Uh huh.
in terms of where we see acceptance and, inclusion. I think my dream for myself, and actually maybe even for all the people that are in my world, like in my orbit, getting through life, my dream would be to, find kind of a security in what it is I'm doing, who it is I am, and to not be trying to second guess that. So, whether or not that's like I have this really secure career performing, or I find something else to do, or I do a little bit of everything, or whatever the ups and downs are, I think that the dream would just be that I'm not questioning it and I'm just letting it happen and I'm not judging it.
Hmm.
Um, I think that would be great if everyone could live their life in that way. Just no second guesses, I guess.
I love that. I hope you're always doing something with theater because I think you're incredibly talented and I think your voice is magnificent. And
Mm.
I hope that you're always, whether it's teaching or performing or whatever, I hope you're always in the arts because I think you give so much to the community and have so much to offer. So I think I'm a fan, if nothing else. I
That's so
think that
sweet.
you're welcome, and it's genuine. Like I think you're fabulous, and I can't wait to see. And you're also young, so I can't wait to see what your career does, and I hope I get the opportunity to see you in many productions going forward. Where can people follow you to find out about other things you're doing, where they can see your performances and stuff?
Yes, you can follow me at Nellie Shu on Instagram. So it's NELLIESHU, just the beginning of my last name, Shuford,
Hmm.
on Instagram. My posts are few and far between. I said this to David earlier, but when there's something important happening, I'll try to put it on there. And I've got my website on there as well, so you can see some of my clips there if you'd like.
Yes, I highly recommend everybody check that out and follow her on Instagram. All right, so we are going to sign off here. That is it for this week's episode. Thank you so much, Nellie, for being fabulous and being so open about your life. I know it's kind of a vulnerable thing to do, to just share so openly some moments of your life. And I appreciate you doing that. And everybody else, if you are interested in sharing your story on the podcast, you can reach me at imgaypodcast@gmail.com. And we would love to hear your story and see if it's a right fit for this. And other than that, we will see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you for being here.